Hello students, and welcome to the next lesson in our AS level Human Geography course. Today we're going to be looking at pro-natalist population policies in France. What is a pro-natalist population policy? A pro-natalist policy is a type of population policy which aims to encourage births and raise the general population level. France was a classic example of a country that wanted to do this, as they wanted a larger workforce as they thought they were underpopulated. They also feared the impacts of an ageing population, so as a result wanted to have more children in order to counteract these consequences of having such a high dependency ratio. So what do they do in order to implement this pro-natalist population policy and manage the population? They passed the Code de la Famille, which was a project offered a number of incentives for all of the mothers and fathers who wanted to have more children in France. They offered economic incentives to families, and for example they gave £1,064 to a family if they ever had a third child. They also gave more maternity grants to mothers as well. They gave them longer time out and, for expenses, paid off their work. For example, they can win up to at least 20 weeks off if they had a child, and the government would pay for all of their wages, so mothers would spend more time at home, potentially looking after more children. They also introduced tax benefits. They gave full tax benefits to a lot of families until their youngest child reached 18. This then influenced them to want to have more children younger than 18 so that they didn't have to pay their taxes. And they also ran quite a few pension schemes. Mothers and housewives were given extra money in the form of a pension in order to stay home and look after and have more children. Impacts from the policy. Here we have some advantages and disadvantages from the population policy. An advantage is that the size of the workforce increased because more children are being born. As a result, in turn, this would have been able to increase GDP output from the country. Also, not as much money had to be spent on healthcare because not as many older people are staying in the population because there are so many young people now. French people who were slightly old and part of the elderly would move out to other places where they could retire, where there's not going to be such a pressure from industrialization from young people looking for work. So as a result, because they're not in the country, not as much money has to be spent on them for healthcare. However, a disadvantage is that more money had to be spent on healthcare for the youth. So the elderly may have left and we're not spending as much healthcare money on them as possible. However, the youth do also require healthcare as well. So we don't know whether it saved money or spent more money on healthcare, but the point is that money being spent on healthcare can be either an advantage or a disadvantage. Also, the young age index was reasonably high, so people had less disposable income in order to spend on services. As a result, the amount of French products that were selling in France weren't doing so well, and the GDP would have then decreased. Here you have some questions on the French pro-natalist policy. What I'd like you to do is have a go at pausing the video and attempting these questions, and then hit play whenever you're ready to see the answers. Here are the answers. If you did get all of these correct, then congratulations. I'd advise you to move on to the next video, which is going to be about population changes in an urban area, and specifically in Canning Town in London. For more Human Geography revision material, be sure to visit www.revisealevel.co.uk, where you can get information in essays, glossaries, tutoring services, or generally for notes in general, and the link for these notes is in the description below. So be sure to check that out to do well in your exams. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.